Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton at Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the number one network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the number one sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners, Latin America, across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south, in the land of the free and the home of the brave. On a beautiful November the 25th, 2019, Rondo Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, riding this great football carousel off of the weekend, and we're coming up on this Thanksgiving Day weekend. But one of the things, Charlton, is going into Thanksgiving Day, all the big-time programs in college and in the NFL that had birds as mascots lost. So I guess we know what we're having for Thanksgiving dinner.
It might be a potpourri-flavored bird. It's all good and never war. I never thought about it that way. I do know if you're a duck, you can never trust the devil, but we've heard that many times before, and sometimes ducks have to learn the hard way. I do want to say there is a lot of sports happening this time of year. Really appreciate all the great things happening in the sports world. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, just tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. Big C Sports brought to you by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. And you'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. Also, you can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast Television, watching on Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. So, Big C, of all the birds that lost, do they kind of feel like the menu in your restaurants, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, they kind of understood that it was Thanksgiving. And fowl is normally what's on the table during this time of the year, Charlton. And when you think about the tough weekend that the Ducks had, the Falcons had, the Eagles had, Charlton, a lot of birds that going to be without feathers this weekend.
And the ones that did get away were the Seahawks. If you can swim and if you're a bird, you had a good time winning games back in Philadelphia. I also want to get into our national suicide hotline for all of our military veterans and civilians. We pay homage to you every show, not just one weekend out of the year. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Well, Charlton, as we're coming up of this week of Thanksgiving, Charlton, this is one of those weeks that everyone is giving thanks and trying to figure out what they're giving thanks for. But every day you should give thanks to our military veterans for the sacrifices that they've made every day of the year throughout the existence of this country, Charlton. And especially now, we have veterans who come back home through these torrid times of wars that they're fighting overseas and, don't have a place to turn to. They come back and people have forgotten the reason why they left for the sovereignty of this country. But we need to find a way to recognize them every day. And suicide has become such a horrific disease with so many veterans, Charlton, and we have to find a way to stem the tide. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline number is one of those ways, Charlton, for veterans to can reach out and have someone that they can discuss their troubled times with, Charlton, someone who is not going to be judgmental on them, someone who is there to listen to their troubles and how they can help them get better. So everyone who sees a veteran, whether they're in uniform or it's not always easy to recognize them, but they've made tremendous sacrifices for this country. And many of them, Charlton, have not found ease coming back home and unfortunately have taken their lives through this horrific disease called suicide. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, hopefully can prevent many of these horrific diseases from happening.
It really can, and that's why we want to make sure that we do our part at least every time we get the chance to, Big C. We want to just pay homage. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255, or they can text 838-255. That's 838-255, and they can get some help. And again, reach out and touch somebody's hand. Make this world a better place if you can. And Jesus said, if you love me, feed my sheep. I think we are feeding sheep. I just want to say this today because out driving around today, and I was just going to get some groceries, but I know people are in the holiday mood. They're getting turkeys. and a lot of turkeys are lined up at these crossing signs, and then people are lined up trying to get different things for Christmas or for Thanksgiving. And it's amazing because we talk about this so much. I still see people out in shopping carts, not the ones they're taking to their cars, but it has all their belongings in them. And some of these people look like they're in their 60s, so they probably fought in some war, Big C, and maybe they didn't. But I love just making sure that we're not up to that. That make any sense, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, the homeless is an epidemic here in America. We're one of the world's leader in homeless people, and you think about this nation with all the resources that we have. We think about all the political fights that are going on right now, but none of the political agenda is about how do we stem homelessness in America.
Yeah, and it's getting really cold too, so again, thoughts and prayers with everybody, but please get some help if you need it. Big C, I want to jump around. I just want to say to number one, we do high school Friday Night Lights, Big C's Friday Night Lights, and a lot of kids are really into that, and it was not just for high schools, it was senior day for a lot of the colleges all over the country, and not every player can have a parent fly across the country to be there for a senior day, but a lot of the schools, they paid homage to their parents and also to the seniors. And so that to me is just important. I know we talk about it for high schools, but I would love to see the NFL do a day like that because they do it for college, and it's usually the last home game of the season, Big C. And I know we can't have the NFL do everything, but I thought it was such a touching gesture. So many parents do so much to make sure their kids get an education and to play sports, and it'd be nice maybe if the next level did that too, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, the difference in the NFL and college, Charlton, that's generally the ending of most players' career, and even in high school. In the NFL, it's a business. It's you going to work. I mean, there's a national take your kids to work day, Charlton, but there's no national take your parents to work today. I think that would be difficult for the NFL, you know, involving parents in what's going on the field, Charlton, because it is a business, and you have to run it as a business.
Yeah, that's very true. We do wish all of our student athletes the very best in life. Big C, I want to go to the world of college football, and I want to just, number one, I'm going to, sometimes you have to eat crow, but I'm going to eat duck this time because I was advocating for the Pac-12 to get those ducks to fly under the radar. You know, ducks is harder to catch when you fly them under the radar, basically. It's hard to shoot them in the scope. But these Oregon Ducks, and we'll get into that, they didn't fly under the radar low enough. I don't think Utah would get into the college football playoffs, and we'll get into it more when we talk about the Arizona State and Utah game. It just seemed like do I owe you California red wine? I know I owe you something. It wasn't blood, was it, Big C? Was it wine or was it blood, Big C, your thoughts?
I think you were sending me a bottle of tears or something like that.
I'll see some duck tears, Big C. Man, I'm pushing for the Pac-12. I want to start off with a team that did it right. They said a Buckeye is a nut. Number 2 Ohio State, 28-17 over number 9 Penn State. Penn State put up a good fight. And I know I think the point spread was 18.5. It's hard to beat a number 9 team in the country, you know, by 18 points. So I like the way Penn State fought. Couple of turnovers. J.K. Dobbins rushed 157 yards. Had 2 touchdowns on Ohio State. They locked up the Big Ten East title Saturday. They survived their real test of the season by beating number 9 Penn State. And Penn State's only loss was a game they were knocking on the door at undefeated Minnesota at that time. Big C, your thoughts on that game?
Well, you know, Ohio State went out and handled business the way that they should. Justin Fields had another dominant game, even though he fumbled the ball once in the end zone, which would have made the point spread more than what it was. But that defense from Ohio State with the return of Chase Young was just dominant against the Nittany Lions offense.
Yeah, he's good. I know we talk about Bosa, how he came out of Ohio State, and he's been, you know, really a lightning rod for the 49ers and a solid player. And then you will look at just watching how Ohio State, it seems like every single year they have another linebacker or two that is like their mirror image. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, what happens with the Ohio State Buckeyes, Charlton, is that you have one of the greatest recruiting regimes in the country when you think about college football. They have a wealth of athletes lined up. You think about Joe Burrow had to leave, you know, Ohio State to go down to LSU to get an opportunity to play. This is not uncommon for Ohio State to have total wealth of NFL caliber players.
Yeah, they really do. So really love watching the way they play. Now, again, I'm impressed also with Penn State. They turned everybody's thoughts that was saying they were going to lose by pretty much 3 touchdowns, and they made it a more respectable game, even though Ohio State was clearly the better team. I want to also get your thoughts on another game that happened over the weekend, and it had big implications for the playoffs. And when you look at what Ohio State did with the 28-17 win over number 9 Penn State team, we got to bring in Georgia. It had it was a 24-19. No, it was a 19-13 game over number 24 Texas A&M. So Georgia, depending on what poll, they're in the top 2, 3, or 4. Everybody has their own opinion. But they scored the only touchdown. Rodrigo Blankenship booted at 4 field goals, and the defense stymied A&M. That was a game about the interior alignment that no one really talks about. It was a mano-a-mano. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it was also a game where the officials, had their heads rear up again, unfortunately, where a controversial no call was not made, where an A&M receiver was mugged over the middle late in the game that would have extended a drive, Dalton, that potentially would have gave them the go-ahead touchdown.
Yeah.
But Georgia has to have some concerns about their offense. In two of their last 3 games, quarterback Jacob Fromm is completing less than 50% of his throws, Charlton. He was only able to produce 1 touchdown in this win over Texas A&M.
Yeah. Now, I know we all want to see the blowouts, Big C. We want to see a team that wins 45-7 or 38-10, and that's not always going to help you. And what I saw in Ohio State and what I saw also in the Georgia win, you're going to have to win some close games, because that's what it's going to be like when you get into the bowl championship series. Was that play egregious against A&M? Probably so. And I know we want the officials to be perfect all the time, and it's just not going to happen. But I want to just blow the horn for Georgia in this thought. Coming down the end, I don't know that player's name, but I think he wore number 7. He had kind of some words with the quarterback, because whatever happened, he didn't call the right audible, and it led to a loss of, a sack, a loss of the play. And they showed it on television. Now, oftentimes that's frowned upon. I want to credit that Georgia running back for actually knowing what position to be in and what play should have been called or audible. And that's okay to do that. That's how you have a winning team. You're not afraid to question the court. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, DeAndre Swift is one of the leaders of the Georgia Bulldogs, Charlton, and he knew how critical this game was. And like I said, Jacob Fromm has had some very lackluster performances in the last 3 games that the Bulldogs have played, Charlton, and even in that loss to South Carolina.
Yeah.
But, when it comes down to bowl selection committee, they really have to question themselves, because now they got to go to the SEC championship and play a formidable LSU team.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just a matter of playing that sloppy game, but Georgia has had some close games, and I don't know if that's going to help them. If you can't score 30 points against LSU, maybe even 40, you're probably not going to beat them no matter who you are, but we'll see what happens when those 2 teams meet up. I want to bring it to also a tuned-up game. Number 5, Alabama. Well, you can say number 5, but the way they play, they're better than number 5 in the country. I think, what was it, 54? I think they beat 66-3 over Western Carolina, I think the score was. Mac Jones passed for 275 yards, 3 touchdowns. A little more than half of Alabama began life without. Tua is one thing you're going to miss him, but defensively, he didn't play defense, and that could carry the tide. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Alabama's just a solid program, Charlton. We saw Mac Jones play a game earlier this year against Arkansas, and he duplicated that performance against Coastal Carolina. Alabama is fine offensively.
Yeah.
This is a team that's full of depth. They have a great running game. If you just throw to the best receiving core that you have in college football, which Alabama possesses, you're going to be successful. And that defense has gotten better as the years gone on.
Yeah, it's imagine how every time we look at teams like Alabama, I go back to when Nick Saban had the Crimson Tide down in the Rose Bowl. They'd actually beaten Texas at the time. And the game was close at one time, but then Alabama pulled away. And it's to the point you can't tell who's who. They just, one player comes out, and the guy behind them is just as good. Kind of like Jalen Hurts, and then Tua. Hurts, I think, only lost 2 games. at Alabama, hurt, and then Tua comes in, and people think, oh my God, best quarterback we've ever seen. Well, they said that about Tua before he was injured. Want to jump into the desert. You know, I've been told as a young boy, you don't play with the devil. I grew up in the church, so you always heard people talk about the devil made him do it. I think Flip Wilson was famous for that, the devil made him do it. But the Sun Devils, and we played to win the game, you think about how they're a 5-5 team. But Herb Edwards, they're 5-5 with a freshman quarterback. They have a young team. And this is a team that went on to East Lansing, knocked off Michigan State earlier in the year. We know Michigan State's not as tough, but they still did it, Big C. And to come back and have the chance at home to face a number 6 team in the country that had everything laid out in front of them in the Oregon Ducks. And it was number 6 Oregon. They fell 31-28 at Arizona State. You know, Herbert was picked off, I think, twice. Arizona State freshman J.T. Daniels threw 408 yards and 3 touchdowns in the Sun Devils' upset victory. But I thought that I was watching the Heisman Trophy candidate in Arizona State uniform. Mix of your thoughts.
Well, you know, this was a game, and it's typical of Oregon in this time of the year, Charlton, when they have a big game on the line that will propel them, you know, to a potential bowl playoff situation, Charlton. They faltered the last 3 years, and this year it came as no surprise when they went down in the desert, and J.T. Daniels, went crazy throwing the ball against Oregon. Over 400 yards and 3 touchdowns in the air for this true freshman from Arizona State. And Justin Herbert did not look like a Heisman candidate or an NFL #1 draft pick with 2 interceptions against the Sun Devil defense.
Now, I do want to ask your thoughts as Herbert is really pumped as the can't miss. People keep saying he's a top 2 or 3 pick in the NFL draft. And as a defensive guy, I know you know offense too, but if you see, he has the size, 6'6", he has a strong arm, but, I mean, everybody wants everyone to succeed. But just like in the game against Auburn, there are times when you don't see intensity. Remember I was asking you about that play down in Georgia where their quarterback, I think Fromm, was in the wrong audible or whatever he was, but his running back let him know right there on the field. He didn't pull to the sideline and didn't wait. Well, Herbert the same way. It's as if they have a lack of intensity. And some people may say that's overrated, but I don't think it is. And he doesn't have someone to pull him aside and say, wait a minute, you're screwing up. He threw 2 interceptions back-to-back. There was no one to get in his face and say, wait a minute, what are you doing? And I think that hurt him long-term, Bixie. Your thoughts?
Well, I don't know if it hurt him long-term, but, I mean, it's just like they did in the first game against Auburn. When the stage is too big for a certain program, Charlton, this is what happens. The stage was too big, the opening game of the season. He lost to a true freshman quarterback who had never played a college football game. And just as he did in game 11 of the season, Charlton, he lost to a true freshman quarterback again who had never started a season up until this year in college football.
Very good point. So when you look at his 2 losses, and you're the NFL pundits, I think your friend Kuiper McShay, and they were touting this guy all year, that this is a guy that you want to bring into an NFL franchise. You know, irrespective of what they say about Colin Kaepernick, if you bring up a player like Herbert, and they're saying that you got to draft this guy, you're going to look at his resume, and he lost to 2 guys that were playing high school football last year, Big C. Did that hurt his draft stock, your thoughts?
No, it's not going to hurt his draft stock. I mean, because he's not playing defense, as you noted earlier. He only plays offense. So when it comes down to defense, Charlton, you got to look at the Oregon Ducks defense. They're inept when it comes to just playing against young quarterbacks that are mobile. They had a problem with, Bo Nix down at Auburn, who was mobile, who utilized his legs. They could not figure him out. Same thing with Daniels down at USC. He was mobile, young, Charlton, accurate, and the defense is the losing part of the Oregon team, not the quarterback. Yeah,
everyone will say, it's amazing. It's just it's a game where everybody gives the quarterback credit when they win, and when they lose, they say, well, it's somebody else's fault. But I see that lack of leadership, that intensity, doesn't seem to be there with Herbert. I want to just say you can never trust the devil. My parents were always right. Big C, number 11, Minnesota, with a 38-22 win over Northwestern. Tanner Morgan led Minnesota to scores on his first 3 possessions and finished with 4 touchdown passes. And they got to be licking their wounds because of what happened at Iowa. That it's hard when you're dealing with 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old men to really stay focused. And they cost themselves based on what just happened to Oregon. And they cost themselves again going back to Iowa, but you got to look forward. Give me your thoughts on the win by Minnesota.
Well, this was a great rebounding win for Minnesota, Charlton. Only if they'd have done the things a week ago that they did on Saturday, they would have had a great opportunity to be in the Big Ten championship game.
Number 12, Michigan, 39-14 over Indiana. Indiana had a pretty decent team coming in there with only 2 losses. Shea Patterson threw 5 touchdown passes. Nico Collins scored a career-high 3 times to lead the Michigan Wolverines. And this is the team also that's playing the kind of football that everyone expected in the early part of the year. It's a little bit too late, but they're still finishing strong, Big C, and they have a big game coming up this week.
Well, Charlton, Michigan, as Jim Harbaugh said about a month ago, he felt that his offense was finally gotten on track. And it's proven that with Shea Patterson having a career-high 5 touchdown passes, Charlton. And now Michigan can look forward to the big game in the Big House next week against Ohio State.
Well, they'll go there. I don't know if they'll look forward when it's done. But, again, Ohio State has to understand, just like Minnesota when they went to Iowa and lost, when Penn State went to Minnesota and lost. You could say even Oregon going down to Arizona State. This is about just playing the way you're able to play, not getting too high, not getting too low. Big game coming up against the Wolverines. It would make Jim Harbaugh's season, but it would ruin the Big Ten's chance at the BCS and the Final Four. So I think you're going to see the best officiating wearing what they call red and gray, Big C, for Ohio State. Number 13, Baylor, 24-10 over Texas. And Texas was like the University of Texas. They carry the banner for the state of Texas. I know A&M has a good program. TCU has a good program. SMU played well this year. But it really is all about Texas. And the Longhorns fell again. It was a bad day for the state of Texas. A&M lost. Texas lost. And then the Dallas Cowboys got beaten up in New England. And some shenanigans going on in that game. But Charlie Brewer accounted for 296 yards, Big C, 2 touchdowns. Number 13, Baylor. They wrap up a shot at the Big 12 championship game, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you think about Texas, that's the real story of this game, Charlton. Tom Herman came into this season with a lot of praise, with a top 10 ranked team in Texas, and now they suffer their 4th loss of the season, Charlton. And they've lost to all the big in-state rivals. They lost to TCU now. Now they've lost to Baylor, Charlton, and people in Texas have to be wondering, where's Charlie Strong?
Yeah, and that's the thing, because there was so much hype. I mean, he's a Caucasian guy. He gets along with the boosters. He looks like their grandkids. So people thought he's going to bring Texas back to prominence like the great Mac Brown did. But there's no Vince Young at quarterback this year, Big C. It's just a matter of, Texas is too good, too talented. A lot like Southern Cal. They can't stay down for too long. Number 14, Wisconsin, 45-24 over Purdue. I really like the way this kid runs the ball. Jonathan Taylor, 222 yards rushing, Big C. A touchdown for the win for Wisconsin. I know they had the hiccup against, it was Illinois that really caused them to tumble, and then they had another loss on the season. Ohio State thumped them pretty good. But this is a team that can play with anybody, it seems, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Jonathan Taylor had another dominant performance, Charlton. His 14th 200-yard game over the last 2 seasons. One of the most dominant running backs in college football. Wisconsin has caught their stride.
Yeah, speaking of catching your stride, touchdown Jesus. Number 15, Notre Dame, 40-7 over Boston College. Ian Book threw for 3 touchdown passes. He really had the book on Boston College, Big C. And Notre Dame, the corral Boston College star running back. I thought A.J. Dillon would play a lot better, but there's times when you're just out of it emotionally. I don't know what it was, but I thought Boston College would at least run the ball for 3 scores, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the Fighting Irish are still fighting, and Ian Book, even though he's had a couple of lows this season, as the season has worn on, he's gotten back in the swing of things, Charlton, and got full command of this Fighting Irish offense.
Yeah, he really has. I mean, it's not good when your quarterback is among your leading rushers on your team. Number 16, Auburn, 52-0 over Sanford, and Auburn had, think about it. They held Sanford 114 yards, and they forced 4 turnovers. It's not Stanford University. It is Sanford, but close enough. Still a very dominant defensive outing, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, they ran those Bulldogs into the ground, Charlton. Auburn, you thought they might be overlooking, but they got themselves healthy. Looking forward to the Iron Bowl this next weekend against the University of Alabama.
It should be a nice game coming up down there in the South. Big C, number 18, Memphis, 49-0 over South Florida. Actually, 49-10 over South Florida. Brady Wyatt threw a pair of touchdown passes, and it helped Memphis get a big blowout win. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the Memphis Tigers in Conference America, Charlton, are an outstanding offensive team. This is a team year in, year out, one of the top scoring teams in the country, and they did it again this past weekend.
Yeah, they're really solid, Big C. Number 19, Iowa with a 19-10 over Illinois. Illinois has been playing better football late. Not enough to win, but still better football late, Big C. Nate Stanley threw 308 yards for Iowa. What a great showing, Big C. Your thoughts?
Iowa is one of those teams, Charlton, that's a mystery. You know, they can play great one week where they're just dominating people even though they got the win. But you think about Illinois, even though they lost, Lovie Smith has the Fighting Illini bowl eligible.
Yeah, they're bowl eligible, so don't fire that man. I know there are a lot of people hating on him, but he doesn't have the recruits that Ohio State gets or even the recruits that Wisconsin gets or Michigan, but he has a team that hasn't given up. I hope he keeps his job there over there in Illinois, Big C. Maybe 35-21, SMU, Navy quarterback Malcolm Perry generated 357 yards of total offense, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you think about the midshipmen, Charlton, they're one of the toughest teams to play against in college football with that wishbone option offense. SMU came into this game, Charlton, looking to get to a 10-win season. Not at the expense of Navy, though.
Yeah, Navy, they can really sell, if you understand. They can sell right past you, Big C. 35-21 win over. I mean, it's just amazing. If you also look at number 22, Oklahoma State, I love their running game. They're amazing on the ground. It's always a team that's going to be second fiddle to Oklahoma, but they get a 20-12 win over West Virginia. Drew Brown threw 2 touchdown passes. It was his first start, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, they were out there without their freshman quarterback Stevens, who had a thumb injury. Cuba Hubbard, for the first time this season, was held without a rushing touchdown, but the Cowboys still came out with a victory.
Yeah, them Cowboys know how to play, Big C. Number 23, Appalachia State 35, Texas State 13. Darrington Evans ran for 154 yards and 3 second-half touchdowns. Appalachia State's making a name for themselves. Their glory days were not just when they beat Michigan in that upset. They're a top 25 program under everybody's radar, Big C. Your thoughts?
They are a top 25 program, but they're still smarting from their loss 3 weeks ago to Georgia State, Charlton, where they would be undefeated and looking at a big New Year's Day bowl game.
Yeah, they can always climb that mountain, Big C. Number 25, Virginia Tech, 28-0 over Pittsburgh. Herman Hooks threw for 153 yards and 2 touchdowns to lead the Hokies, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, a great game for the Hokies and also a parting gift for defense coordinator Bud Foster, who coached his last college game, Charlton. He's been a great defensive coordinator for the past decade at Virginia Tech.
Yeah, it's great when you have, the college football is amazing, and to have so many people that touch young people and just give them hope and some leadership, some mentorship. And when you look at the Ivy League, oftentimes like the historical black colleges, they're kind of overlooked, kind of an afterthought or an asterisk. But I want to just say that Yale and Harvard, Kurt Rawlings, threw 2 touchdown passes in the final 88 seconds of regulation, and they rallied Yale from a 17-point fourth quarter deficit. Yale is 9-1 and 6-1 in the Ivy League. They celebrated clinching a conference title in the darkness about 15 minutes after sunset and the 105-year-old bowl. Someone forgot to pay the light bill, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the Yale Bowl is one of those great historic stadiums, Charlton. It's 105-year-old. It does not have lights like Wrigley Field used to be.
Yeah.
The New York Giants actually played a season in the Yale Bowl, Charlton, when the original Giants Stadium in the Meadowland was being built in the mid-'70s. So when you think about the rivalry, 105 years these two teams have been going at it.
That's amazing. 105 years, and it's amazing with all the money it costs to go to school in the Ivy League. Why can't they get someone to turn on the lights, Big C? It just doesn't make any sense, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you think about the historicness of this stadium, Charlton, that football was meant to be played in the daylight, in the natural day, and that's what a lot of the Ivy League schools do, Charlton. They play under the sun, and that's what Yale and Harvard, that's what makes this rivalry so special.
Yeah, it makes it special. And I want to also just congratulate, a lot of football was played over the weekend, and people get their thoughts on what teams should go where and who should be ranked where. LSU 46. I mean, think about it. They have a team that can dominate anybody. You would think so. But I want to just bring up some thoughts on Pac-12 football. I saw the USC-UCLA game, and it was a big win for Clay Helton, of course, and the Trojans. And then I saw at the end of the game, he had a long conversation with UCLA coach, and from what I saw, USC still have something going. And I know people want to say, well, just move on and get rid of Helton. I don't always think that's the best thing to do. They had a blowout win over UCLA. I know a lot of people may say, well, so what? Because both teams have been down this year. But just like Illinois, when you see a team fighting, I think that means something. I would like to see if Helton can stay on, with the Trojans, a 52-35 win over UCLA. Does that matter to you, Big C, or is it just give me 10 wins or find somebody else? Your thoughts?
Well, college football is about what have you done for me lately. I mean, they got a new regime that they potentially be looking at. They have a new athletic director. He has to evaluate everyone at the university and all the collegiate sports, Charlton, because it's about generating revenue, and wins generate revenue. When you have a half-empty stadium, that's not attractive on the grand scale. I know you constantly talk about the Pac-12 being competitive. You have to find a way for the athletes to be competitive, Charlton. Is it coaching or is it just lack of talent?
Well, that Coliseum, they reshaped it to hold, I think, 78,000. They had about 70,000, so it was pretty full house. But when you consider both schools, it's still some work that's happened in the Pac-12. And then Utah, 35-7 over Arizona. They're still the last hope for the Pac-12 conference, but it is all fair and level war. I want to take what's called the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. When we come back, I want to ask you what happened to the world of NFL football. It's really starting to count now, Big C. Looking forward to it when we come back in just a moment. All right, Big C, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com. You can follow Big C Sports on the apps that I really love called Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic. He'll do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast Television, watching on Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of other smart TVs all over the universe. I want to say, oh, Canada, our home and native land. I want to congratulate the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, the 107th Grey Cup Championship. They defeated the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and Hamilton was favored to win that game, Big C. It was a 33-12 win. It was played in beautiful Saskatchewan, Alberta. It's amazing. When you have any league, we've had the USFL come and go. We've had arena football come and go. We've had, World Football League. We have so many leagues that come and go. And then the NFL, people keep saying, well, can the league go on? The viewership is up or down, and the CTE concussion issues. If you're a league that can do anything for 107 years, Big C, they're doing something right, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, a long-running standard up north of the border, but the amazing thing that strikes me is that most of the teams have two names. I thought a tiger was a cat, and you already recognize that when you're naming them the Tiger Cats, and then you got the Blue Bombers or Bombers or whatever, and then Blue, so each team has two names. But I guess, an exciting championship game up north of the border. I saw glimpses of it, Charlton. They didn't have any snow, which I thought it might be a little colder than what it was at the end of the game. I mean, a lot of big, exciting plays, and Winnipeg, I think they said, won the first championship in 29 years, so congratulations to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
Yeah, they got it done the first time. I think 1990 was the last win. And then if you think about, we talk about teams that have history, Winnipeg has won 10 CFL championships, and then their last one coming in 1990. So I'm sure they have a lot more going for them. And just across the, I guess you can't say across the border because they don't consider it border, but up north, our friends to the north, great championship game, and congratulations to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. I want to jump into the world of the NFL, Big C, and to me, it's just a great time of year. The holidays are here. People, for the most part, are in a festive mood. Most people are having a good time. And we go all the way back to Houston and Indianapolis. And it was Deshaun Watson that was tackled down, and the ball was out of his arms before he hit the ground. And I don't know who recovered the ball, but the officials said we can't determine who recovered the ball. So they kept the ball in the possession of Houston. But if you're an official, somebody gets up off the ground, doesn't that mean that's the person that recovered the ball? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the thing about replay in the NFL and even in college sports, Charlton, it's a catch-22. And I've never been a proponent of instant replay, even though they say, it needs to be there to determine the accuracy of a play. The game is played in real time.
Yeah.
And that's how sports should be gauged in real time. Don't go back and say, okay, let's break it down frame by frame and make a determination.
Yeah.
I'm a proponent, and I played when the game was in real time. Whatever the play was called, that's what stood.
That's what you stood
and that's what I miss about the game of football today.
Yeah, I understand everybody has their opinion, but I want to jump into, I would say, the biggest game of the day, just because of all the ramifications in the playoff atmosphere when you look at the Dallas Cowboys going into New England. So America's team, I guess, is still the Dallas Cowboys, but the NFL's team is the New England Patriots. And everybody has their own opinion. No opinion is any more valid than the other. But to see two tripping calls against one team, when I think it's been called no more than, 7 times in the whole season for all 32 teams combined, to get two tripping calls on an offensive lineman that's being bowled over, and you're trying not to fall and keep your balance, that's different than trying to trip someone on 2 feet, Big C. And on both of those calls, the Cowboys are getting first downs. Now, I'm not advocating for any team, but that reminds me of the Tuck rule when Tom Brady, he knew he fumbled that ball. The officials called a timeout, and they came together. And 5 minutes later, they said, well, the ball, it was an incomplete pass. They gave it back to New England. They went on and kicked the field goal and beat the Raiders. And I think that this is just my opinion. The Cowboys were about to drive down and could have scored again. I mean, that's just my opinion. Give me your feeling on that as a defensive player. Have you ever been tripped, and was that a tripping call? Your thoughts?
I've been tripped many times during my playing days, Charlton, but as you look at these officials, they can call whatever they want at any point. And I think as an official, when you're looking to throw a flag, you can throw a flag at any point in the game. And I think that's what the officials were looking to do, is throw a flag. It wasn't a very egregious play, Charlton. And when offensive linemen are being rushed and pushed by 300-pound linemen, Charlton, and you weigh 320 pounds yourself, you're always trying to get your balance. You put your legs out. You widen your base. It's part of what happens in the NFL. Defensive linemen are always trying to go through gaps. They got to run over legs to get through gaps.
Yeah.
It's become more and more frustrating as I watch games, Charlton, and I'm glad that I'm not playing in this era, and I couldn't have played in this era anyway because we were too violent back in those days, and they've taken the violence out of the game. But the calls that the officials make, they constantly have you scratching your head all the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing. And I thought that Prescott played a good game, especially in the weather when he put his gloves on. Before that, a warm weather team going into the cold weather, you got to know more about that. And I want to leave that question before we get on the other teams. Everyone has their opinion about who should be the coach down in Dallas. Should Garrett be gone? Well, you don't fire someone when you're in first place, is my opinion. They're still in first place. But and everybody can have, there's no Monday morning quarterback that's ever lost a game. But I want to get your thoughts as a defensive guy. You got a team that's just driven the ball down to the 11-yard line. They got a running back in Zeke Elliott that's averaging about 4 or 5 yards every time they touch the ball. I think they had a 3rd and 1. They threw to the back of the end zone as opposed to running it twice to get a yard. It's just my opinion. At a point, I think 6 minutes left, you're not going to score a lot on New England's defense. Why kick a field goal to go down by 4 when you have to come back and score a touchdown anyway? If they went for it and missed it, you got New England on the 11-yard line, and their defense is backed up, and that gives you some opportunity. Do you like that call, or am I just grabbing about nothing, Dixie? Your thoughts?
Well, the purpose of the NFL is to score. You take points when you can, and that's what Dallas did. It's easy to question the play call if you're not on the field and you're not going with the rhythm of the game. Quarterbacks are making the best adjustment that they can on the field. New England has the best defense in the NFL. They're not giving up run yards. They're not giving up pass yards.
Yeah.
So you take what you can. Just because you've done something in the past against another team, it's not going to work with this record-setting New England defense, Charlton. They stymied the Cowboys' offense all day long. So you can have a coach, you can have an owner, and you can have players that are frustrated. This is New England Patriots. They do not lose at home. The last time the New England Patriots lost at home, Charlton, it was against Alex Smith when he was with the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah.
They're not going to lose to anybody. I don't care who the team is.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it's just a matter of everybody has an opinion, and I want your thoughts. I don't advocate for anyone losing a job, especially when you have the season going. I mean, anyone can say a broadcaster should lose his or her job because of whatever reason. Are you on that wagon too? Garrett, not the right guy. Maybe he's not, but they're in first place. You don't fire a coach in first place. Mixer, your thoughts?
Well, I don't care whether you're on the high school, college, or pro level, Charlton. Coaches get blamed and they get the acclaim.
Yeah.
The damn players got to play.
Yeah.
When you're making mistakes as a player, it's not the coach dropping the ball. It's not the coach missing the tackles. It's not the coach dropping the interception, Charlton. It's not the coach dropping the passes. Players have to execute. It's not the coach getting a tripping call.
No.
So, I mean, it's easy to blame the coach. It's one guy. Let's point a finger at Jason Garrett because all he's done is won in Dallas.
Yep.
So it's his fault.
Yeah. If you fire the coach in the first place, that means everybody on the other teams in that division, they have to go. I think sometimes the TV and radio guys, look at your own position. Maybe they should fire you if you're not in first place in the ratings. My opinion. So I want to get you to another game. Discount double check. Aaron Rodgers, he's a California native. And not that this matters. I think the 49ers just whipped him. You ever watch a team just get a whipping? They got a whipping. It was discount double check. And if it was LeBron James, they say, he's making too many commercials. The first time he needed to call his insurance agent is when he fumbled the ball on the first possession, and it was picked up and run down to about that 3-yard line, and the Niners went in on the first possession. That was all Aaron Rodgers' fault. I know there are times, and I like Aaron Rodgers, but I've seen him get players cut that made mistakes or had fumbles. I've seen him get coaches fired because he didn't like the way they were running things. But at some point in time, Aaron Rodgers is the reason the Packers get blown out. I know they had an offensive lineman hurt, but what do you have, 104 yards passing, Big C? That's not acceptable, Big C. Your thoughts?
The San Francisco 49ers are as good as advertised. They are the best team in the NFL right now. I don't care what people say about the Baltimore Ravens. The 49ers are legit. Jimmy Garoppolo outdueled Aaron Rodgers last night. He took Aaron Rodgers to task. He showed him what a current NFL quarterback is supposed to look like. And the San Francisco defensive line was as good as advertised. They were all over the Green Bay Packers offense.
Yeah.
So for all those proponents to say they want Aaron Rodgers with the football the last 2 minutes of the game, for 60 minutes, he didn't do a damn thing last night.
Yeah. Well, that was funny because it was all about Aaron Rodgers and Garoppolo. That 49er defense gave up 8 points. 8. You can count them. 8. That's amazing. And then that same team, 49ers, they got their tight end back, so they look like they're rolling, and I really love the way they're playing. So I think it was 37-8, the final score there. Dallas also fell to the Patriots, 13-9. I would say the Patriots and the officiating crew, just my opinion. When you look at the Titans and the Jaguars, I don't understand Tennessee sometimes. Sometimes they look like they want to be in the playoffs. Other times they don't. They get a big win, 42-20 over the Jaguars. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the Tennessee Titans are a true mystery. And then when you look at Ryan Tannehill, looked like an NFL quarterback the past couple of weeks. Outstanding offense. Derrick Henry, over 100 yards on the ground. And when he gets running, nobody wants to tackle him, really. I mean, He reminds me of Christian Okoye when he was playing for the Kansas City Chiefs in the Nigerian Nightmare.
Yeah.
Just a hulking running back.
Yeah.
But the defense was excellent for the Titans. And Nick Foles. Life without the Eagles is not always as good as you thought it was.
Not always as good. And I want to say congratulations to Mr. Snyder and the Washington Redskins. And then I want to come back and get your thoughts on Jerry Jones since we're talking the same division. The Redskins 19 and the Lions 16. And I was wrong about the Oregon Ducks game, but I was right about the Redskins getting their second win against the Lions. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it was a win for an ugly win for the Redskins. Dwayne Haskins now has a win under his belt as an NFL starting quarterback, but he was also childish at the end of the game, Charlton. When there was still a snap to go in the game to run out the clock, he's overtaking selfies with a fan.
Yeah, if he's going to be an NFL quarterback, you got to be focused on the game, especially when you haven't gotten off to a good start. I agree 100%. I know that you said a lot of birds had a bad happening over the weekend. You said a lot of the birds got either lost the game or they got barbecued. So I want to say the Seahawks, which is also a bird, got a win 17-9 over the Eagles. I'm not one to jump on Carson Wentz or jump off the Carson Wentz bandwagon, but many pundits did tell us that he would be the MVP of the NFL this year, and he just hasn't played like it. I'm not saying it's all his fault, but Wentz, 4 turnovers in a game by a quarterback that got $100 million. They're playing at home. They've been had the last 2 weeks by the Patriots and also the Cowboys. Give me your thoughts on the Eagles. Is it Carson Wentz? If he were on any other team, like the Raiders bench Derek Carr, he could have been benched. I mean, that many turnovers, you can't help your team. They only scored, and their touchdown came in the final moments of the fourth quarter. Bixie, your thoughts?
Well, I think at some point people got to stop making excuses for Carson Wentz, saying, that his receivers, you're the quarterback. You're a $100 million quarterback. It shouldn't make any difference who's playing receiver because they're paying you the money to make everybody else look good, to deliver the football to people, Charlton. But when you throw 4 interceptions in the game, and those defensive backs were wide open, by the way.
Yeah.
Not only that, Charlton, you gave up sacks, you gave up fumbles. As a $100 million quarterback, you have to be accountable. I know in the press conference he said, he's going to take the blame. Well, he had no choice but to take the blame. The ball was in his hands.
Yeah.
And the Philadelphia defense played outstanding football against Seattle. When you think about it, they held Russell Wilson in check this part, and they gave him an opportunity to win the game. It's just Carson Wentz has just not delivered the goods. We talked about at the beginning of the season that he was a mediocre, middle-of-the-road quarterback. Could he make it through the season? We even saw him get banged up in this game.
Yeah. Well, there's a point in time when coming into the season, and I know they cited the time that the Eagles went to the Super Bowl. That was a great Nick Foles. And so when you get the $100+ million, I think, what is it based on? His performance against New England and his performance against the Seahawks is nowhere near $100 million in performance. Nowhere near it. So something's going on that makes a team say, this is our guy. And I don't know. I mean, I wish him the best, but he came out of North Dakota State. He was always injured. And he's been injured every single year. Hasn't been injured this year, not that I recall. But you never know. Emotionally, something's just not there. He doesn't have that fight in him. It's a lot like Justin Herbert for the University of Oregon Ducks. It's like they don't have passion. And I don't know if that matters or not, but maybe it does. And again, I want to ask you, Russell Wilson, he is a magician. This is a team. They haven't lost a game on the road. They're undefeated on the road. And people say he's our MVP, but this is a guy that doesn't have to score 4 touchdowns in a game, but he's still a magician the way he leads that offense. Bixie, your thoughts?
Well, this is a guy who can complete some improbable passes when he's playing, Charlton. Even though he let one get away to a wide-open tight end in the end zone, which would have put the game out of reach, basically. But Russell Wilson had an outstanding. Rashad Penny rushed for over 100 yards and a touchdown in this game against the Eagles. So they had a very balanced attack. Russell Wilson knows how to complete games. One of the things that Russell Wilson did, this is the 100th year of the NFL.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson, in his 8 years in the NFL, is the only quarterback to accomplish this, to have a winning record in his first 8 seasons in the NFL, each of his 8 seasons. You think about it, 100 years of professional football has been played in America.
Wow.
And African-American, Russell Wilson is the only quarterback in NFL history to have a winning season in each of his first 8 years in the league.
That is amazing, especially when there's so much talk over the history about guys they're not cerebral enough and can't figure it out. So I love watching the Seahawks play, to come down to the Seahawks and the 49ers. And the Rams are still having something to say about it. We'll find out as we preview their game tonight. But just a great win on the road against Seattle, to go undefeated, to go in the Eastern time zone and win again. And this brings me to John Gruden. And also $100 million over 10 years, guaranteed money. And the Raiders, and I said this last week, and again, everybody has their opinion. I said that they have the best record of a bad team. And I know a lot of times people were looking at them challenging the Chiefs. They're not going to challenge the Chiefs. When they struggled at home against the Cleveland, actually not Cleveland, but against the Cincinnati Bengals, Big C, and that was at the Coliseum, to fly across to the East Coast to play really a 10 a.m. kickoff for the West Coast, Big C. They played the lowly Jets that have been surging and flying high lately. They lost, and that's acceptable. But to lose 34-3, and now, how do you just explain that if you're John Gruden? 34-3, Big C, $100 million, your thoughts?
Well, you got to look at the New York Jets and what they've done over the last 3 games, Charlton. When Adam Gase got a vote of confidence from the ownership saying that he would be back next year, the Jets have seemed to take it off. They scored 34 points in each of their last 3 games. Sam Darnold has looked amazing. He hasn't thrown interceptions. He's been throwing touchdowns. And the defense has been playing phenomenal. Ever since they traded Williams to the Giants, they've gone crazy on defense. The Jets have, and, they've been shutting out opponents, and the Raiders could not muster any offense. I know Jacobs was banged up in the game, but that Jets defense was even better than their offense.
No, they look phenomenal. And I mean, you're not knocking Gruden, but this is just a lot of things that have happened with the Oakland organization. And so Las Vegas, open your arms and welcome them in. Here they come. Big C, the Saints 34-31 over the Panthers. What a great game, went right down to the wire. And the Panthers missed a field goal to take a lead. And then the Saints come back and get the game winner. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, they missed a field goal and 2 extra points. I mean, this is not the first time that they've been in this position. Everyone's talking about how great that Allen is at quarterback. Well, you might want to think about Cam Newton. I mean, but also the Saints got a little bit of their home cooking, Charlton, in a pass interference that was called against them that allowed the Panthers to go in and score and make the game tight, Charlton. But the Saints did what they needed to do in this game. Michael Thomas is the best wide receiver in pro football. You know that when the game is on the line that Drew Brees will find him. And I couldn't figure out how they let him be so open to get in field goal range. Then the next play, Alvin Kamara catches a screen pass to make it just a chip shot in overtime.
Yeah, it's all fair and level. War, a great game. And when the crowd is rocking down there in the Dome of New Orleans, they really, really love their football. The Cleveland Browns 41 and the Dolphins 24. Big C, Baker Mayfield 3 touchdown passes. And he leads the Browns to their 3rd straight win. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this game was more about Nick Chubb's on the ground, over 100 yards on the ground, rushing, getting into the end zone also, Charlton. When the Cleveland Browns go through Nick Chubb's, that offense can function. And, Baker Mayfield is going to get the highlight reels, but Nick Chubb kept the Browns chugging along in this game, Charlton, and they dominated the Miami Dolphins.
Well, another team that won, and they had to win, and you have Tomlin making a quarterback change because he said his guy wasn't getting it done. The Steelers 16 over the Cincinnati Bengals 10, so a 16-10 score. And the Steelers forced 2 fourth-quarter fumbles, and then it led to their win over the Bengals. But they also made a quarterback change. They didn't wait until the season was over. Tomlin did it now, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the Steelers, I mean, when you look at where they are, Charlton, they are a struggling team. They're without quarterback. Mason Rudolph has struggled all year long, and he was playing quarterback by default. I think he saw his last game against the Bengals, Charlton, of the season, and they're going to go with the young rookie kid. But, the Steelers, when you look at them defensively, Charlton, they're the 4th best defense in the NFL. They just have no offensive production. Yeah,
they're winning by the skin of their teeth, Big C. The Bears 19, New York Giants 14 in a game with Trubisky. He records two touchdowns and 2 interceptions in a win versus the Giants, but a win is a win. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Mitch Trubisky, quieted the naysayers for a weekend, Charlton. He came out and got a couple of touchdowns for the Bears. The defense was stalwarts as also. But maybe it did a little bit for his confidence. We'll see how he responds next week.
Definitely will. The Bills over the Broncos. I thought the Broncos would show a little bit more kick. I think Broncos kick, Big C, especially when you walk behind them. But they fell to the Bills 20-3. And you look at Josh Allen, he let the Bills pass the Broncos, and I've never seen a Denver team play this bad in many, many moves. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this game was all about Frank Gore, Charlton. Frank Gore moved into the number 3 position all-time NFL rusher. He passed the great Barry Sanders, Charlton, for number 3 on the list. You think about Frank Gore has been in the NFL for 15 years, and all he has done is be productive. He's always been a guy that you can count on. People thought his career was over when he was at Miami when he tore both of his ACLs.
Yeah.
But you think about it, 15 years in the NFL, over 15,000 yards rushing, Charlton, and still people question, should he be in the Hall of Fame?
The Hall of Fame, he put him in the Hall of Fame before he finishes playing Big C. 2 more games to get to. The Buccaneers 35, the Falcons 22. Jameis Winston, I think he has 20 interceptions this year now, came into the game with 18, but they still get the win, 35-22. And you said everyone that had a bird either got barbecued or they lost the game, Big C. And the Falcons, their bird, they lost, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charles, this game was for last place in the NFC South, and the Falcons said, we will fall down there, and that's what they did. You know, the slogan of the Falcons, I believe, is rise up, and they're still waiting to do that. But Jameis Winston did his normal thing coming into the game, throwing a couple of interceptions, but he also threw 3 touchdowns. Chris Godwin looked outstanding as a wide receiver for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Mike Evans also became the first wide receiver in NFL history to have 1,000 yards in his first 6 seasons as a pro, just like Russell Wilson. Mike Evans, the wide receiver of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, one of the most underrated players in the league.
Well, it's all fair and love and war, and that's what we love about the game. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. The apps that I really love are by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast Television, launching on Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Tonight, we have the NFL showcasing on the West Coast again. I hope we have a better game than we had in Northern California, Santa Clara, San Francisco. Tonight, down at the LA Coliseum, Big C had the Baltimore Ravens, and they're flying high, and they're playing the LA Rams. Now, everything that was associated with a bird over the weekend got either beaten in a game or barbecued on a grill. Well, a Raven is a bird, but I think last week is last week, and this week is this week. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, this is an interesting game tonight, a contrast of 2 different styles. A quarterback who last year everyone said was on the upward path in the NFL to stardom, even though he made it to the Super Bowl and had a lackluster performance.
Yeah.
And his coach, who was a quarterback whisperer, a guru, who was the next savant of the NFL. All of a sudden now, it's John Harbaugh in Baltimore who is the next savant of the NFL, even though he has a Super Bowl title already. And this is a guy who's been able to change his philosophy as a head coach and adapt with Lamar Jackson. He has changed the whole regime of the Baltimore Ravens to make it fit Lamar Jackson's skill set, and that's what you have to do. You don't always mold a player to force him to fit into a peg, Charlton.
Yeah.
They put a peg around this young quarterback and embrace it. But the Baltimore Ravens defense has been outstanding. We all know about Aaron Donald and his exploits with the LA Rams, but this is defense by committee in Baltimore.
Yeah.
I think, you know, they're going to get after Jared Goff tonight, try to make him uncomfortable, and which Todd Gurley will show up.
Yeah, and which one will show up, and I know that Jackson's going to show up. And again, the 49ers playing the Ravens next week, so they're on their West Coast NFC West competition. Looking forward to a lot of good football, and we wish them nothing but the best down in Southern California. I want to just close out tonight's schedule. NBA basketball, the Grizzlies are at the Pacers, the Magic are at the Pistons, the Brooklyn Nets at the Cleveland Cavaliers, the 76ers are playing across the border up in Canada against Toronto, the Charlotte Hornets will play the Miami Heat, the Sacramento Kings at the Boston Celtics, Minnesota Timberwolves at the Hawks down in Atlanta, the Jazz from New Orleans, actually the Utah Jazz taking on the Milwaukee Bucks, the Trailblazers taking on the Bulls, and the Lakers at the Spurs, Thunders at the Golden State Warriors at the new Chase Center. They haven't had a lot to sing home about in the new Chase Center, but maybe that's for next year. Big C, I know you talked about birds. You talked about barbecue and a lot of good things and some bad officiating. My goodness. Get rid of replay. I mean, it's not working for anybody. Big C, do we need another 5 years of replay? Your thoughts?
Well, I think that the Rules Committee, Charlton, will take a long look at a lot of the replay rules that they're dealing with this year, Charlton. And like I said, the number one thing that they put on replay, there needs to be a play clock on the replay. It should be only 40 seconds that you have to review the play, Charlton, and make your decision. It either stands or you overturn it.
Well, it's either standing or overturning. It started with the tuck rule, and it's ending with the trip rule. What a joke. Jerry Jones, don't fire a man that has you in first place. Big C, back in the day. There was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, I'm looking forward to an outstanding game tonight in the Coliseum with some leg magic by Lamar Jackson. But I want to take a step back to 1971 on this day, November 25th, Dalton, in Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska, Oklahoma versus Nebraska, the nation's top two teams, where Johnny Rodgers had one of the most electrifying punt returns in college football history, propelling the Nebraska Cornhuskers to the national championship.
I remember that play as if it was yesterday, and you can remember it too every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south, as we always tell you. There's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you, on every Big C Sports Show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.